Counties are required that when they're budgeting, at least 30% has to go to development. 70% goes to recurrent expenditure. And most of them are able to do that, at least on paper. But when it comes to budget implementation, you look at the absorption rates of development budgets, it's pretty poor, and partly because of the lateness of exchequer releases. How then does that affect the rollout of those programs, especially when the money comes either too late in the year, in the financial year, or too early the following financial year at a time that the priorities are already changing?
Yeah, you know, Sam, maybe before I come to that, let me just comment on the issue of the bank overdrafts. You know, the question I would want to ask is a bank draft a loan? And I agree it's a loan. The basic principle in financial management is that you should not take a loan to pay recurrent expenditure. So even from the word go, it tells you that's the wrong direction. The other thing is, from what Honorable Bill was saying, the issue of excesses in the government, I think is evident. And actually, if I were the president, lucky enough I'm not, I'll focus more on the expenditure side of the equation. That's all I've put all my efforts, to make sure that we bring expenditures within a level where we are sure we can meet basically the recurrent expenditure. You know, Sam, we might not want to say it, but I can tell you for sure, we are borrowing to meet recurrent expenses in this country, even at the national level. And that's where the problem is. And now that brings the question you're asking, the question of development expenditure. You know, both at the national level and at the county level, on paper, in terms of budgeting, we would pretend that we are allocating that % of the resources to go to development activities. Truth be said, at the end of the year, when you do your final accounts, you realize that normally development only reaches 15%. Either where donors who are funding, that money has not been committed at all, it has not been used. What does that mean? It means we are not growing the cake. So our cake remains the same, but many more people are coming on the table to share it. And that's where you see the problem where we are. Because unless we do development, then we are not likely to talk about the issues of economic growth, the issues of distributive issues relating to many Kenyans accessing resources from the national government. And just take it, like, for example, when you send money to the counties and they are doing a road from point A to B, Sam, if you are to do an analysis of what we call the trickle-down effects of that road, how many people benefit from that road, and the impact of that one road to the local economy, you realize that what you lose when you don't do that road.
Right.
And that's what is happening. We do budget for water projects, we do budget for roads, we budget for health sector projects, but we don't implement them. Which means then, even though we are claiming we are triggering a lot of activity at the bottom, there's minimal. People are being paid salaries, if I told they will be paid, to sit in offices. Because if you earn your salary, you don't go out to supervise a road. If you earn your salary, you don't go out to do extension work so that agriculture can improve. Basically, then you are being paid aside to sit in the office. And in terms of, from where I sit as an economist, that will not help this economy grow. So we want to see a strict adherence to that rule of thumb, that as much as possible, let that % of our budgets go to development. Because the person who decided that, and it is in our act actually, it is in the Public Finance Management Act, the person who, the wisdom behind that statement, that push forward development 30% and push 70% to recurrent, must have gone through a lot of research for people to get to those ratios.
Right.
So anytime you interfere with those ratios, it means something is not working well somewhere. So for me, I want to say, let's really get money to do development. And you know, the other thing we are not saying is, when these overdrafts are taken by county governments, at the end of the day, the money we allocate them, there will be some financing gap because interest is not factored in the budget. So there will be a financing gap. What happens? Either their locally generated revenue will meet that gap, or then you find that at the end of the day, they will not be able to meet their recurrent expenditure because some of that money will have now been reallocated to meet the bank overdrafts. And you know, at times you do take bank overdrafts. Even me, I take. Those overdrafts are expensive, sir. They are not cheap. They are expensive. So let's avoid them as much as we can. And that will happen if we do a proper cash flow management. You know, as we said, anytime you do a budget, you do your procurement plans for the year, you do your cash flow plans, and I think really what you are not getting right is how to use the money we are, because you collect money on monthly basis as a country, how then we allocate that money, and then the underlying line is allocating money to key priorities of the nation.